in June of 1990, Dan Harmon became the district's prosecutor-elect. The first news conference or news interview that he gave, he used the entire interview to begin to discredit me.
Jean Duffy had been disposed of, forced to flee to Houston, Texas, in very real danger, where today she teaches geometry to high school kids. The answer as to why Dan Harmon had teamed up with a malleable reporter to conduct a smear campaign on a public official because she was performing too efficiently is jaw-dropping.
After working with the FBI for 18 months, beginning in March of 1995, of course now I realize what was the basis for Dan Harmon's viciousness against me and determination that I be not allowed to do my job. I now know that Dan Harmon was on the tracks with the boys the night that they were murdered.
Linda Ives states it coolly.
We learned that one witness has passed a polygraph placing the prosecuting attorney on the tracks the night Kevin and Don were killed. This is not just a case of local corruption, and that's what has made the battle so fierce, I suppose. You know, very early on we knew that there was local corruption in law enforcement and even public officials. And when the state police got involved, we were ecstatic because we thought that finally somebody was going to get to the bottom of what was going on in Saline County. And at that point in time we thought it was simply Saline County. And then it became very clear that the state police were not doing their job and were not going to do their job. There was a 1990 federal investigation, and we were in fact promised indictments out of that 1990 federal grand jury investigation. And suddenly when Chuck Banks shut that investigation down in June of '91, without prior warning, we were devastated, simply because it made it an entirely different animal almost, because who has the power to shut down a federal investigation?
Good question. We wondered, who does have the power to shut down a federal investigation? Could the deaths of two hapless high school seniors on an August night in rural Arkansas have anything to do with matters pertaining to our country's national security?
The secret history of our life and times was, and still is, written at places like here. This is officially the Intermountain Regional Airport, better known as Mena, a small, obscure town in western Arkansas through which was woven the threads of virtually every secret government black operation of the 1980s. If you're talking Oliver North, the CIA, Contras, and cocaine, you're talking Mena.
The mere mention of Mena has been sending shivers down the spines of federal government propaganda officials for 2 administrations now. Which is good, because it's nice to see Democrats and Republicans working together for a change. Mena has become a symbol of how our 2 parties can work together in America. It's a truly bipartisan cover-up. What are they covering up? Whatever it is must be pretty big, because it's got some people killed, like, to pick just one example, the head of then-Governor Bill Clinton's security detail, Jerry Parks, was killed in a hail of gunfire after telling associates he was a dead man 1 month after Vince Foster died. Some inquisitive souls, like Arkansas State criminal investigator Russell Welch, only got sprayed with anthrax. You're tempted to tell him he got off easy.
She came home and took me to another doctor. She had to help me to the car. Took me to another doctor who was a Vietnam veteran in town, who, when he saw me, immediately called the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta. When I got there, there was a team at St. Edward's Mercy Hospital in Fort Smith waiting for me. They were in touch with the Center for Disease Control. The next day, the doctor, she asked me if my job was, how much danger was involved with my job, and I told her that it was, danger was pretty much inherent with a job, that I was a cop and generally handled major cases. And she said, well, we think that you've been poisoned with anthrax. She said, we don't have time to test for it. We're going to treat you for it. She said, somebody did this to you. Said somebody sprayed this to you. Described how anthrax, for the purpose of assassination, carried in spray canisters.
Russell Welch spent much of his career as a criminal investigator skulking around this airport, and his is acknowledged to be the most complete and trustworthy account of what went on here.
A criminal investigator for the Arkansas State Police was stationed in Mena originally in 1979 because of allegations of narcotics activity at the airport, and there were smugglers here before Barry Seal. And I was pressured by the state police to monitor airplane traffic, develop sources of information, monitor whatever methods possible, fuel pumps, in numbers, to determine what kind of drug traffic may be present out there. And the airport itself is not unique to drug traffic. I think there's drug traffic everywhere. I think any airport could have a lot of it. My concern was this one. It was the one that I was assigned to, and it was the one that I was given responsibility to keep up with.
So what was everybody coming here to do? Bill Clinton was at Mena, which itself isn't sinister. He was the governor of this state. The CIA was at Mena. They finally got tired of years and years of denials and admitting running special ops out of here once. Right.
Another case I tried to open about the same time, not long before that, involved a person who it turns out now is well placed in CIA, had worked with Southern Air Transport in Miami, lives in El Dorado, Arkansas, was a friend of a very good friend of Buzz Sawyer, who was killed on the C-123. He had 2 smuggling aircraft at the Mena airport. I was ordered not to open an investigation on those smuggling aircraft. These are direct orders from the state police, no explanation.
Historic cocaine buccaneer Barry Seal made these runways his home, and it's no wonder.
If you look at a map, the location seems pretty nice for a trip from South America, and it is small. It's a lit airport, there's not a tower on it, so it's not monitored, so it's an ideal spot for a smuggler to be able to find at nighttime without having to worry about being recorded every time they come in and leave.
While Barry was bringing in up to $5 billion worth of cocaine into the United States of America during the 1980s, this is where he based his cargo airline.
And at that time I thought, because Barry Seal was already saying that he was involved with the CIA, and there was reason to think that there was CIA activity because of the C-123 and the knowledge that was made available then that the C-123 had made a trip to Nicaragua, that possibly Barry Seal was in fact working with the CIA somehow. And I thought I'd be able to develop that and close my case and get on with the rest of my career investigating murders, robberies, and rapes.
Everybody comes to Mena. The Barry Seal story is the secret history of the 1980s. His life and violent death were bracketed by 2 very public events. In the first, he piloted a C-123 military cargo aircraft to Nicaragua in a drug sting that was designed to be the Gulf of Tonkin incident of a U.S.-Nicaragua war.
I know every American parent concerned about the drug problem will be outraged to learn that top Nicaraguan government officials are deeply involved in drug trafficking.
This photograph, taken from the back of Barry Seal's plane, purports to show a Sandinista official, Federico Vaughn, loading cocaine onto Barry Seal's plane. In fact, Federico Vaughn worked for Oliver North. But it's this event for which Barry Seal will be remembered longest. In this, his beloved C-123 Fat Lady airplane was brought down by Sandinistas over Nicaragua with Eugene Hasenfuss on board.
Good evening. There's a furious debate going on tonight between the governments of the United States and Nicaragua, and it revolves on the question, whose cargo plane carrying ammunition to the anti-government Contras was shot down inside Nicaragua yesterday? And who were the Americans on board working for? They'd apparently flown from El Salvador. The government of Nicaragua says it is proof of direct U.S. involvement in the war. The Reagan administration says not true. Our first report is from Nicaragua, and here's ABC's Peter Collins.
The Sandinistas say the aircraft that went down was a Korean War vintage C-123. Informed sources close to the Contras confirm this and say they have been using the aircraft to drop ammunition and supplies by parachute to their men. It crashed in remote, swampy terrain deep inside Nicaragua that can be reached only by Sandinista Air Force helicopters. The Sandinistas claim 4 Americans were aboard the plane. They say 3 were killed and 1 survived. He is identified as Eugene Hassenfuss, a Marine Corps veteran from Marinette, Wisconsin. The Sandinistas quote him as saying he was an American advisor based in El Salvador. The Sandinistas also say the plane was carrying more than 50,000 rounds of small arms ammunition, rocket grenades, other weapons, and boots.